This is a recording of an X-Space hosted by Her Majesty Queen Bee and your Uncle Owl. To join these spaces every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, check the show notes for details.
All right. I think we'll just get started then. So the question that I posted on the community was just what do you all want to talk about in the space tonight? Anything specific? And my friend CFI said, how to find good mentors for your kids. I think that's something I wish I had more of growing up. So CFI, for you that don't know him, which is probably most of you or all of you, was homeschooled, and he is now a certified flight instructor. So he's got an interesting story. He went through classical conversations, I believe. So he's got an interesting story, but I thought that was a good way to go about finding mentors for your kids. So I guess that could start really young or as they get older. There's a whole lot there in that one question. So I thought I'd start out with my story of how I looked at things. So when I was growing up, my best friend, she was more my best friend because of her mom. I looked up to her mom. I think I was about 12 or 13 when I really decided I wanted to be like her. And she was a great cook. And okay, hopefully anyway, she was a great cook. And welcome, Aunt Towel. And I wanted to be like her. And so when I was thinking about that for my kids, I thought I wanted somebody that they could look up to that was like my best friend's mom. And so ever since they were young, I was always looking for people that they could connect with, women for the girls and men for the boys. And I say boys, I only have one boy. So I've got a great family and they can look up to them. But I've also always looked for people that they can connect to. And for us, that's important, like in a spiritual way. So I would look at church. Some of my best friends were really close, and I would invite them to be a part of our lives, like on a deeper level, and to be a part of the kids' lives. One particular friend was my best friend. I think I was 18 or so when she was my best friend. And when I had my first kid, she was... I invited her to all the birthday parties, and she didn't end up having kids of her own. She was married, but they didn't end up having kids of their own. But even to this day, my kids are really close to her. My oldest is 16. And so we invited them to all the birthday parties. We would just go hang out with them one-on-one. So that's kind of how I started. As they got older, I've recurated, but I'm always on the lookout for people who could mentor my kids. People who are morally match us, and people who are kind. A lot of different things. Think of things that you would want in your kids, and just invite those people to be around a lot. Whether or not they have kids, you're looking for adults. You're looking for them to build relationships with adults, and this is incredibly different from sending your kids away to, as Uncle Owl says, the box down the street. It's incredibly important to curate who your kids are around. And so that started at a very young age. And then as they've gotten older, we move people in and out of our lives and tell the kids if we move them out. There've been a handful of people that we've had to move out of our lives, and we're very upfront with the kids and say, well, this is important to us and it's not important to them, or they believe this and it comes in direct opposition to what we believe, or that kind of thing. And so because of that, I don't want to speak too soon, but my kids, my oldest is 16, she's almost 17, and then I have twins that are 14, and they hang out with people and analyze, is this a good person for me to hang out with? Why or why not? And we discuss it openly, and our circles are very tight. And so as far as morally good people, I haven't figured out just yet how to bring around people that are in the fields my kids want to be in. But I think that'll work itself out, and I have some ideas about that. But why don't we talk about this part first? Does anybody else have any similar thoughts or views or experiences?
I'd like to open up a question to the group. Have you ever had, like, from your church, people that you do not want in your children's lives, even though you go to the same church?
I don't necessarily, we don't go to church very regularly, but I know people that, they go to church every single Sunday, but, and they're all, dressed up and do the church thing, but they definitely don't live by the Christian ideals when they're out of church. And I definitely there's a couple people in our neighborhood that all go to the same church, and there's, some actually kind of reflect it and others don't. And I tend to, you know, they're obviously passing on their same kind of morals and values to their kids. So there's a few kids in the neighborhood that behave a lot like their parents do, and I tend to try to keep my kids like, oh, go play with these guys, because they'll ask like, hey, can we go play with so and so? And I'm like, oh, what are these guys up to? And just try to kind of steer them in a different direction, because I've seen them outside of when the kids are around, and or I had to call the police on one occasion, and it's it's not a great thing. And these are quote unquote church people.
I'll open it up to everyone to say, but I have had that experience where there are people in my church that we don't hang out with, and there have been people in my church that we've had to cut off relationships with, and there have been people outside of my church that we've hung out with. So it's definitely not just a church thing for us. It's definitely more about character. It's good to have shared values, however, so I do value that quite a bit. And I think you typically can find that better inside church than you can, say, inside the local biker bar. So I tend to gravitate towards church for those reasons. But I definitely have had to cut off relationships with people from church related to not shared morals.
I don't know. There's some pretty great people in those biker bars.
Well, I don't disagree. I'm just saying they're not typically the people I am like, hey, you should come hang out with my children.
They're not in their homeschooling.
Probably not. Maybe. I mean, I'm sure that there's some value to be had there, and I would probably take my kids. Okay, so I am kind of open about that. Like, I'll take my kids to a lot of places, but it's with me supervising it. Me and King B, we're supervising it, and we're very guarded about who they're with regularly, and definitely guarded about who they're with, by themselves.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I was definitely guarded about who was around my dog when I had him.
That's a good example.
Because, you gotta watch, because I had to watch to make sure no one fed him anything that he wasn't supposed to have. I wanted to make sure people handled him properly, and gotta make sure your kids are safe and make sure they're around people who will treat them with as much respect as you would.
How about with local Facebook groups, homeschooling Facebook groups? And has anyone had any good experience with them?
I've got something to say there, unless Her Majesty has a response.
I've never joined a local Facebook group. I've never met anybody in a local Facebook group that I didn't meet, and they invited me to the Facebook group. So no.
We have one of each. We ourselves have two different groups that were local groups, and we joined, and one was an absolutely lovely experience, and we're still very connected to that group, and one was a nightmare, and we don't talk to any of them from that group anymore. But I hope and believe that they're all doing great, and they weren't exactly bad people. It was just a strange situation. But yeah, so I have one of each. Some hit and miss there.
I had the exact same experience as you, Uncle Al. I don't use Facebook, but my wife does, and she's in some homeschool play group type, groups. And there was one that was really cool, and they do meetups all the time. So all the kids and their parents, we all met up at one of the local farms here, where they were doing pumpkin patch stuff during Halloween season. and it was really cool. And then there was another one which was like a non-secular homeschool group, and I mean, I don't know if it's like out of the. Oh, I think Uncle Al said he can't hear. I don't know. All right. Well, anyway, there was like a non-secular group, and from what I can tell on Facebook and on other things, it seems that the people that hang out in that group tend to, uh, I'll just say, become easily offended and are of like certain political persuasions, which is weird, and they bring a lot of that into the group. So I'm not sure why. I mean, I guess because a certain demographic tends to go to church more or something, but like even at the group, there was like we weren't doing like church type stuff. It was a pumpkin patch thing, and the kids were having fun. And then the other group, we all went, and it was all just gossip, and like a lot of them were trying to talk politics and stuff, and it was just really weird. And then they were overly protective of their kids, and like, oh, my kid's neurodivergent, something something, and they just made it all about what their kid couldn't do, and didn't talk a whole lot about what their kid was good at or anything. And it's just so yeah, we had a very similar experience. So we no longer attend any meetups in that group, and I think my wife left the group altogether, and we just stick to the other one now.
I think we should continue with the discussion and stories. I'm going to get to a punchline in a minute, but it's about what you were just saying. And so anyone else have some more to say?
Yeah, we had a pretty much a large homeschooling community on Facebook here, and early on we had a lot of experience with them and everything. But the curators, the Facebook curators of the group, they started getting really left wing, and started to kind of crack down on anything religious that was posted and stuff like that. So eventually, we kind of left the group and wanted to start a new Facebook group for the area. And so that's a big possibility. If something's not serving you and your family, you can create your own group. So anyway, we didn't create a new Facebook group, but we definitely talked about it.
The groups that my wife and our kids are the closest to were definitely not sourced through Facebook groups, but we are glad to have been related to a couple of those.
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant. Like, I've definitely been in homeschool groups, and I've had good and bad experiences, like all kinds of experiences. But I've never actually met anybody through a Facebook group. I've looked through some of them, and usually if there's a decent sized Facebook group, I don't know, I don't feel like they post enough information for me to figure it out, and so I kind of just give up really fast. So I kind of go for I try to meet a couple people. Like when we moved to where I'm at now, there was a really large co-op, so we just joined, met a few families, and we went to our church that we're going to now, and met a lot of homeschooling families. We happen to be in a very homeschool rich area, and they said, oh, we're going to this homeschool group and you should go with us to that one. So then we met more people there, and so it's been kind of a tree of networking. We go somewhere, meet a bunch of people, somebody invites us somewhere, we go there, meet a bunch of people, somebody invites us somewhere, we go there. So that's how we've been doing our networking for the most part. And I think that's really been the best way for us. When we first moved, we went to 3 different homeschool groups. The one was easy to go to because they just had meetups that we went to. Another one, we had to be interviewed, and they said they needed to pray about whether it was right for us to join or not. And I was like, okay. And then they prayed about it and said it was, but I was like, I think this might not be my kind of homeschool group. It was a weird vibe to me. And I don't even remember the third one, to be honest. And the first one that we originally went to, it ended up that it had a lot of kids who were homeschooled because they'd been kicked out of like alternative school. So it had a lot of bad kids in there. And so we veered away from that. But we had already met people from there that we liked, and then branched out to different activities and different people. So our homeschool network is really a cacophony of people from all over, from a bunch of different areas, and which is basically the same way we did it in Colorado.
And to the Prescott's original, to John's original sorry, not John. Original question was, have you gotten your community through church groups? Has there even been in your church groups some people that you have not wanted to associate with? And I felt like that was a good kind of second layer question, because it highlights the fact that if you're a family and you're not definitely connected to a group of families that you as adults are already familiar with, connected to, you've already spent time together, and you recognize that you have, shared values and trustworthy to each other and all that. If you haven't done that yet, it's meaningful to say, okay, well, goodness, I've got these kids and we got to figure out what to do now. So we should get connected to a group of families. And there's nothing wrong with starting by saying, well, my goodness, it sure seems like we should get them connected to wholesome groups of families. And so it's easy to go choose a church group, but you're probably just as likely to find at least some people there and some families there and some people within that group that you may or may not fully vibe with. So it's meaningful to take that a little bit with a grain of salt, because first of all, no one's perfect. And so that doesn't mean that anyone inside, for example, a church group is going to be perfect either. By the way, that includes me. That includes us. We're not perfect either. So it's understandable that everyone would want to, be cautious and rightfully so about who they associate with their children and their families.
I agree with that, and I think it's important to keep in mind that I think as far as like church members and stuff like that, and there's certain types of people we vibe with, and there's certain types of people we don't, and there's a huge variety in there. And I'm not trying to be rude to anybody or anything. There's just, I know what type I'm going to vibe with and what type I'm not, and I don't really want to waste my time and emotional effort in those, and which I think is an important thing to understand.
It's something we need to be able to talk about again, and it's the word judgment. The word judgment is just thrown around as being bad. There's nothing good about the word judgment in today's society, and that's actually wrong. As parents, I would say, notably as fathers, and this is a recorded line, and I'm going to get myself in trouble by being sexist. Fathers absolutely should be judging who they're around. And so one of the number one things there is that fathers should be judging themselves and taking themselves seriously and being the kind of person that they would expect their children to be safe around. And they should be doing that with everyone else. Magnetic Norse, I see your hand. You go right ahead, please.
I have a hand, and it was up. I just put it up, though. I'm just playing around. So I'm just going to pose a question, and I would encourage any feedback that you guys want to give. Let's say you went to a group, and a group function, and you weren't aware of the parents' politics. And I'm sorry, I should have swallowed. I keep doing this. Anyway, you go to the function, and your kids are enjoying themselves, and your kids are experiencing no political bend one way or the other, but you happen to disagree with the parents politically. You find out over time. How would you move forward with that?
I have a great response to that. Anybody else want to take over first?
I'll take a stab at it. Well, the thing is as a father, we look upon the horizon of potential dangers, whether they're real or actualized. And so the most important thing is to look at potentials. And if you see a potential problem in the future, you have to make a call. And so even though, the kids may, be meshing in some way, you have to weigh the consequences, because we men have and again, being sexist, we men have a responsibility to look on the horizon and see those dangers and those potentials, and protect the family. It is our job to do that. So that would be my response.
Good response. Do you have a response to that, Magnetic Norse?
No, I'm just real curious to hear what everybody has to say. I have my own thoughts as well.
Cool. Who's up?
I'm pretty curious to hear what you have to say, Al.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I would say.
I'm up. I'm still awake.
Nice. Hey, Narm. So the first response to that is a difference of political opinion means nothing to me. Nothing at all. Within family, within friends, nothing. If we disagree on politics, I can't imagine that would affect my way of thinking about anyone. However, it's a little bit like taking the proper stance if there's ever such a thing as I don't know, I'll use the word war, even though that's a bit extreme. You don't want to be the one to have started that. You know, it's not the right thing for us to start problems. But I would say the kinds of things you're looking for, especially regarding politics, is at the first sign that it's creating a problem between you and that individual or that family. You just go. You know, just let it be clear that I did not start it. You know, use your conscience as best as possible. Live at peace with all men. But I think the kinds of things that cause political questions to drive wedges in between families means one or both of them are probably taking those politics too seriously, and that may very well be the kind of thing that's not healthy for children, including my own. And so, as a part of my response to that, I would say I have a pretty strong feeling that it won't technically be the politics that will be the problem. It will be some other aspect of morality or virtue or values, and the politics itself will sort of be a reflection of that. It will be a kind of the canary in the coal mine, maybe, but it won't really be the problem. It'll be, as Jonathan Prescott just said very well, it's kind of like on the horizon. It's a little bit more vague. And I would just say, I would never want anyone to have thought that I, as a father, did not want my family to associate with another family because they didn't share my politics. But that's me. That's personally me. But that doesn't mean that I would never, because it may very well be that what became a political problem or disagreement turned into like genuine problems between us as people, as friends, and that is not a good sign. And I think that might be the way I'd put that.
So I have it from a mother's point of view. I'll give you.
Yeah.
So I definitely. So I just see things completely in a different way, and I love that. My thought on that is it doesn't matter to me, but it does matter to me as well. I just watch and see. So I'm the ultimate diplomat, and I'm the ultimate I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings kind of person. So and mostly I'm concerned about my kids. I've learned to be concerned about my kids, not necessarily random people that I just met. So the way I would approach it is, oh, we had a good time there. And so I'd be watching and seeing like how deep is this going to go? Like, is this something where they are grooming their son to be their daughter? Because, I mean, we're just cutting it off right there if that's the case. Is it something where I disagree with them about, international politics? No big deal. So first of all, judge that. Second of all, if it's something that's going to be a big deal, just cut it off. But if it's not something that's going to be a big deal, don't worry about it. But if it's one of those in betweens, feel free to watch and see. But in the meantime, like, don't go to all the events, just go occasionally, so that if you do have to cut off eventually, it'll be easier because you're not that close to them. So don't go to an event every week. Go maybe once a month and just feel it out. And if it's a bad thing, you can phase it out. And if you start to grow in your relationships with people and it's not a big deal, you don't have to worry about it. I have had to cut off friendships before. We had one wild and free group, and what's weird is they were all Christians. I don't know if all of them, but pretty close. But that's not what divided the group. What divided the group was one girl had a husband that was a law enforcement officer, and another girl was very anti-police. And they had a very loud disagreement, and everybody took sides. And it floored me, to be honest, because these are women that I'd known for years, and I thought they were all really close. And I just thought, wow, we can't be diplomatic about this at all. It's my way or the highway here. And so I actually phased down relationships with all of them because I was just so turned off. So phasing in and phasing out is kind of the way I would do friendships. I have cut people off completely and suddenly, but that's very special and very rare. But phasing in and phasing out, that's how I would do that. Magnetic.
Yeah, a quick just 2 cents, and then someone else can pick back up, or you can respond to this, was that the first thing you said, they're grooming their child to go from one gender to the other, or that big, massive political outburst over, I don't know, BLM or whatever, anti-police versus someone whose husband was law enforcement. To me, neither of those are fundamentally political. Those rest at a really deep level as far as values and virtue and morality are concerned, and ethics and everything. It's like, it's simple to call that a political disagreement. I don't think that's right. I think it's actually deeper than that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's part of why I kind of phased out both of those situations, because I found out that they are not people that I agree with. I found a lot of camaraderie inside and outside of church. So I don't want to make this sound like all churchy. That's just my experience.
Yeah, same.
But I shared values is what's important to me. And yeah, I completely agree with you. That's not actually a political discussion.
I have some stories.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so we have some like interesting ones because we started out doing a lot. We didn't know people who were homeschooling when the kids were young. So we would go through, oh my God, we went through the earliest version of Yahoo groups. This was even before Facebook homeschool groups were a thing. And yeah, so we met a few people that way, and we would get together with them for a while, and then we slowly branched out and met more people in the homeschooling communities after that. After that, we discovered that they did every year they run a not back to school picnic, where basically all the homeschooling families go on the first day of school and spend the entire day at a beach. And so that turns out to be the best place to meet people, because then your kids can start playing with people who are homeschooled and they sort of see who they vibe with. So my kids would make a bunch of friends that way, and you kind of find out about all the activities people are planning to do during the year, get numbers, get all that stuff. So that's, and you can kind of do a vibe test. So that has been a cool way that we've done it. For a long time when the kids were little, we got together with a bunch of people semi-regularly, and we would go to various museum trips and groups and stuff like that. We'd get together, And then when COVID hit, it was actually, things really fractured really quickly. So we live in Canada. Things were very different here compared to what any of you guys experienced in the States.
Fractured is putting it nicely.
Yeah. So, and I live in like, a very liberal city in Canada on top of it. So like really, really, no matter, I remember talking to my aunt who lives in DC, Washington, DC, and she was still floored by the stories we would tell of Canada. So whatever you guys heard, it was that. So that really like set, that sort of like was like the fine line of like the whole community fractured, and you would end up with community who were like very diligent, only doing online stuff, and like wouldn't talk to certain people and wouldn't do that and wouldn't do that. And then there would be other groups. And so, for a good, I don't know, 6 months to 8 months, we just like did nothing with anyone except for like our very close friends who were, we already knew, nothing with groups or whatever. And then at one point somebody said, listen, they're running a parkour class, kind of whatever, deep cover parkour class for the kids because everything was closed. And I was like really hesitant. And so we ended up doing that and meeting a whole other group of people who were new homeschoolers because of COVID. So they were now all homeschooling because of COVID, but it was a great vibe check. My kids got along with them super well. And then we ran into the problem that a couple of years after COVID, they all went back to school. And so now we're stuck in the same situation where my kids are still friends with them. We all like get together like every 3 months. We have a party with all the parents and kids, and it's fantastic. So everyone's still friendly and we love doing it, but it's not something that you kind of do on an ongoing basis. A lot of the kids are in, high school at this point as well. So it's like, it's super busy for everyone. So
Subversive parkour during COVID pandemic lockdowns is where you met a bunch of families that you could connect with and your children got along with. That honestly, that needs to be like a book and followed by a Netflix miniseries about how to fight the power. I love that.
It was wild. Yeah, we still do. So basically every like 3 months, somebody from the group hosts a party for some reason or another. So our last one we did a New Year's, and prior to that Halloween or whatever it was. So we'll just keep doing it. All the kids get together and it's super fun.
Anyway, I cut you off. What were you about to say?
Oh, so then we went back to the not back to school picnic last year and this year, and then it was just total vibes check, same thing. Whoever the kids got along with, I would just go talk to the parent, make some sort of joke that made it, clear that if you have to like, make it kind of clear that you're not gonna just settle for anything anymore. So I always try to say something a little bit on the lines of, if we're not going to handle this humor, then then this probably won't work because I don't want to deal with it. So, so that worked out great. So now this year we joined another group, a homeschooling pod. My son got along with two of the boys really well, and we ended up joining another pod. We get together every week, and it has been absolutely fantastic. The kids get along so well. It turns out all the families, I know you guys joked about the neurodivergent stuff, but like when you're dealing with kids who have, certain needs and whatever, having other families going through the same thing is like an absolute lifesaver.
Huge deal.
It's so massive. And I have now one parent in the group who has a kid slightly older than mine who went through all the same stuff, and I just get to, completely take all her strength. So that has been wonderful. And so we just keep going through it that way. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You go through periods where people come and go, but it ended up working out pretty well in the end. And it's funny because that one mom who I get along so great with, the first time I was at her house, maybe the second time, her husband told me he was a police officer. He's like, we don't really tell people that though. So I thought that was really funny way to tie it into what you were saying. He was nervous to tell people that he was a police officer because of the reactions he sometimes gets.
I love that. John, you're a co-host. You can just start chatting if you'd like. Magnetic Norse also had his hand up. I don't know if you guys want to figure out who's first.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in right after that. I just wanted to make clear I wasn't making fun of the neurodivergent thing as much as I was saying that some of the people in that group were basically making that the whole personality of their child, and they just kept basically saying like, "Oh, my kid can't do that because they're neurodivergent. My kid can't do that." And there wasn't a whole lot of like what my kid can do. Sorry for my son. He is.
Don't you apologize. I'm not going to accept that apology. No, that's a really good point. That's very common also to have groups with the neurodivergent children, and they have a hard time integrating with others too for various reasons, and that's one of them. Yeah, I can appreciate that for sure. Norseman, go right ahead.
Well, also, it's fine to make fun of neurodivergent people. I mean, I make fun of Nicholas all the time, but but I do it because I love him, and he knows that. Anyway, I was going to kind of expound upon my previous question and say, let's say you had religious differences between your families, between the groups that you've met, and you were of one persuasion or a lack of persuasion, perhaps, and you were sending your kids over to someone else's house for the dinner time. You knew that they were a safe family, nothing bad is going to happen to them there, but they might be, experiencing perhaps like a bit of pressure to pray one way or another. How might you deal with that? And then conversely, how might you accept other children into your house and prepare yourselves for incoming atheists, for example, and, change or curtail what you do around your house to be accepting of people you don't wholly agree with?
That's a great question.
If someone else has thoughts, but I have a lot of thoughts because we are Jewish with a lot of Christian and atheist friends. So I have so much experience with this. But if someone else has something they want to say,
no, you go first. Go right ahead.
So I find that definitely like I think that usually there is a same thing, like similarly with a vibe. So this past New Year's was a really good example because Hanukkah is normally a bit earlier in the year. It's a bit more towards the beginning of December. And this year it was very, very late. So it was spanned from Christmas to New Year. So when we had our New Year's party this year with all the groups of friends, none of them are Jewish. I would venture to say this group of friends, none of them are particularly Christian either, like super Christian at least. And we basically told people, hey, we're going to go light the candles right now. We're going to sing a few songs. We're going to do our thing. You're welcome to come join us if you want to be in on the experience. Otherwise, you don't have to. every single family and their kids all came, lit Hanukkah candles with us, enjoyed it, had a great time, ate latkes, and like nobody cared at all. And like, in fact, like the opposite, like my friends were like, that was so wonderful. I want to hear the songs more. I want to. So like they were all super into it. They like the idea of it just because they're open, loving people who like experiencing different things. So I think that that happens a lot. On the other spectrum of things, some of the newer friends that I've been chatting with a lot are super Christian, and we just have talks about the Old Testament. They ask like, what are some of the differences with Judaism and with Christianity? And we just end up talking about a lot of the stuff and just relating it anyways. So we just get along in that way, and they're the same. Like they're not going to push it on anyone. We push our stuff on anyone, but it goes back and forth. And then I do find that you tend to get, like even with my daughter, she'll sometimes say, oh, it's kind of weird being friends with people who are completely atheists. Like it's a bit of an odd thing. So I think it naturally sort of sorts itself out. The kids can be curious about things, and then just having that open discussion with them, constantly. She sort of appreciates when her friends have a bit of God in their life versus not. And so then it'll get her to want to go towards, oh, let me go to synagogue more or volunteer more in that community so that I have a bit of a closer tie. So I think it could really go both ways as long as everyone's sort of accepting of the fact that like people are going to do their own thing. Now, it does go a little differently because with Judaism, we never try to convert people. It's opposed to Judaism. So that's a big difference with Christianity, whereas you guys do a little bit more proselytizing, whatever the word is. So
Close enough.
yeah, like it starts and ends like that. So it's a little bit different, but that's sort of how we've usually approached it. And I don't think we've ever had a severe issue with any religion aspects that's not seen through political aspects.
Mm-hmm. I really want to hear what John and the Prescott say about this.
Okay. Uh, we've had plenty of clients of many different religious persuasions. Obviously Christian, but atheist and Sikh and Jewish and that sort of thing. And really, one of the commonalities in our coaching clients is that they they adhere to a basic set of morals and values anyway, even the atheists. And so that's really we talked about politics, but that's just an indicator. You can have numerous different political views, but like Queen Bee was saying, is it's really the most important thing is the shared values and virtues. And one other thing I would say is your children are also an indicator, because if
Boom.
they don't mesh well, then of course that's something to consider as far as if you're going to establish a relationship or put energy towards that. And if there is a problem, you don't have to like be direct and cut it off. You can just kind of fade into the background sometimes, because that's also a very diplomatic way of doing things. But really, the most important thing is the shared values and virtues that you hold, because eventually those are going to come through with the children's discussions about things, because the children are a reflection of their parents.
I have a thought about this as the homeschooled kid. Um, I did go to my freshman year in public high school, so my community wasn't quite as curated. So I was introduced to a lot of different religions, and my mom was very open. My mom is very Christian, like you. She's not in your face, but my family, like, we talk about it. We're not trying to proselytize anybody, but it's a big part of us. And my mom is pretty much the leader of our family in that way. My dad is, but my mom's kind of the heart of it. So anyways, my mom was open to me going to other churches and trying out different religions, and I read about all different kinds of religions. I was interested in Buddhism, and I went to actually an Israeli dance class just to see what the dances were all about, because that seemed fun to me. I went to Mormon Catholic. I didn't find any like interesting like Eastern friends or anything. I just went to whatever my friends were doing. So, and I ended up staying with basically the churches that my mom went to, although she's probably a bit more, I don't think fundamentalist is the word. No, that's definitely not the word, but she, I don't know what the word is. Anyways, I kind of stay with more my mom's type of churches, but I think the common theme was that we stayed with people that were of our same vibe, our same moral. I'm having a hard time because I'm getting tired, but our same moral background. But as I got, that was like late teen years as well. So when I was driving, I was going to all these different churches. So, and there's a huge difference between allowing your 5-year-old to go to a left-leaning Methodist Buddhist church and letting your 16-year-old go to a left-leaning Methodist Buddhist church. Those are two entirely different things. You have to allow it where it comes naturally, where the responsibility has been earned. And so, yeah, I did try a Methodist Buddhist church, and it was a female lesbian pastor, and it was definitely not the church for me. So, yeah, we had a lot of different, things. So, but as far as religion, I think I can talk about religion. It's not a big deal to me if people disagree with me. It's actually a big deal if people agree with me, because I don't find that very often. But yeah, I wouldn't, if my kids, going back to Magnetic's original question, if my kids were going to something, actually, Dins, we had the same thing happen to us, because I had a libertarian party one time at my house, and it was Hanukkah, and they actually brought candles to the house, and we singing the songs and everything. We lit the candles, and it was wonderful. It was so fun. So yeah, I'm open to doing all that with my kids. I enjoy that kind of thing, to learn about different religions and different beliefs, and I do adhere to mine, but I have zero problems talking to anybody. I don't have a problem talking to atheists. My kids, like you were saying, Dins, they tend to gravitate towards people who have some form of God in their lives, but it's also a huge part of who we are. So I understand that, but I don't think any of us have ever had problems talking to people of different faiths at all.
John, I'm going to ping you again. Are you available to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll go from a kind of a different perspective. So in our little cul-de-sac community, we have the kids right across the street from us. They go to Catholic school, and their parents, they go to church every Sunday, and they're Catholic. And then in the house right behind us, they have a bunch of kids, and they are Russian Orthodox. So the females never wear pants. They're always wearing dresses, and the wife has the hat thing. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but like only married women wear that. And so all the kids kind of intermingle and play together. But when the kids were younger, the neighbor kids would every now and then would talk about God, and that brought some questions from our kids, and we answered their questions. And we've since gotten a little more into the topic of God and church and everything. But the experience that we had with the other neighbors, the Russian Orthodox ones, I guess they were playing outside, and it was near Halloween time. And my daughter was super excited for Halloween, as she is. My 7-year-old, she always loves dressing up. She plans her costume out months in advance. But I guess it came up in conversation, and one of the girls that's around her age said that they don't celebrate Halloween, and everyone that does is going to go to hell. And so my daughter came home crying and was freaking out, because she knows what hell is. We've explained it to her because it came up before with the kids. So we had to reassure her that that is not the case, and that that's just that's what they believe, and that's what they were taught growing up and everything. So and by choice, our kids kind of have chosen not to play with them as much. Like if they're outside at the same time, they'll play together, but she used to ask to go knock on their door and play with them. And now she doesn't do that anymore, and that was her own choice, which is great. That's always the preferred one, is if your kids can make that choice for themselves, not to mingle with certain people because they're uncomfortable, then that's the best way to do it. But at the same time, going back to my older point where having to call the police a couple times, That's the same house, and yeah, it's just I going back to Magnetic's original point. Oh, sorry, little man. Oh, geez. Going back to Magnetic's original point, I would just say, as long as you're comfortable with your kids being around those people and like having dinner with them, that's great, and you can answer any questions they have. But the main thing is being comfortable, with the parents and the other kids. And at the moment, I'm not really comfortable. Like, I would never send my kids into those people's house. And if they want to play outside with the kids, that's fine. But they just have to answer some hard questions sometimes.
So I think anyone who's been in this space with us before tonight, but including if you've been here for about an hour, I think you deserve a punchline. So who's ready for a punchline? Magnetic Norse, I see you had to dip out. I think you're back. If you had something you wanted to add, you're welcome to pop in real quick.
No, I just had to take a phone call real quick. I'm sorry that I missed
good.
a portion of it, but the rest of it was quite interesting. Go ahead. If you want to spike the punch, that's fine.
Punchline time. If you're sending your kid to the federal penitentiary box on the street, you're getting everything no matter what, and you have no control over it, period. Full stop. Second is, based on everyone's story so far, it takes a long time, days, weeks, months, years, to associate with people and occasionally disassociate with people so that you know that the people that you're children around are people that you want them to be around. So it's just a cost. It's a sacrifice. It's one or the other. It's all of the above and deal with it, or it's going to take time. And how that goes is not going to be perfect. Guess what? If they're going to the federal penitentiary box down on the street, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be the worst version of all possible situations all at the same time. It's also going to be the greatest of all of the above. It's just going to be all of the above, 100% of the time, all of the time, no matter what, and you have no control over it whatsoever. Now, I want to say something about developing your children, and that is when they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everything we're saying right now absolutely matters. Guess what? By the time they're 20, they're going to be in the world around everything. So at some point, they're going to engage with the rest of the world, no matter what. I mean, unless you're Amish, and that means you're probably not in this X space. And if you are never going to be around the entire world of community of people in society, then fine. But if your children are ever going to enter society, they're going to at some point experience absolutely everything. What I think is weird is putting your children into a full-time job, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, every week for 13 years, to be in a box generated by the federal penitentiary system full of people who are going to be from every single possible human experience at all times. That is a very, I mean, you want to talk about a free radical. This isn't just the neighbors that are weird. It's all of the neighbors that are weird, and every single neighborhood are all going and sending their children and picking up their children and going to the events of that school with you and your children. So good luck. And so to me, the great punchline is, we're sitting here and we just for an hour taking the idea very seriously and realizing in everyone's story, as far as I can tell, it takes time, and it's also not perfect. And it's really great when you find something that works, and sometimes it doesn't stay together for who knows what reason. And sometimes you think something works and it doesn't work and falls apart and you got to start over. And sometimes you get your kid running home screaming and crying because they just got told they're going to hell. Listen, at the federal penitentiary box down on the street, that's what you're going to get all day long every day. And that doesn't sound that does not sound optimal. That sounds suboptimal. So whatever it is that you were hoping to put together for a community, and if you disappointingly only find a few people, but you manage to find a few families that you actually connect with and feel good about sharing your children and their values together as a community, that is infinitely more valuable than the default of sending them to the federal penitentiary box down the street with God knows who. And I'm not even going to get started on the teachers. And I love the teachers, by the way. My wife is a teacher. I'm a teacher. I love teachers. But man, there are some nut jobs out there.
So I haven't run into a whole lot of situations where I've had to say, oh, you have to stop hanging out with so-and-so. And I have friends who send their kids to public school who are like, sorry, I'm doing laundry. I'm sitting right by their wash dryer.
No worries.
I have friends whose kids go to public school, even private school, and they're like, my kid isn't hanging out with the right kids. What do I do? I'm like, I don't know, because we haven't had to experience that a whole lot, honestly. Like, we've curated our community pretty carefully. And I can't even imagine just throwing your kid in with a whole bunch of other kids and hoping for the best. Like you said, there are the best, but there's also the worst. There's everything. There's everybody.
There is absolutely the worst. You could never imagine.
I
Yes,
can't
some of
imagine. I've
our
seen it.
some of our coaching clients have come directly out of public school, and wanting to homeschool and everything because their children have gotten involved with just some of the worst elements of society, and because the like Al was saying, the penitentiary box down the road is not something that you want to mess around with, because once you have an issue that happens, you can't undo it, and so that's one of the main reasons why we homeschool is to introduce some of that curation to our families, and that's really the most important thing, that I can think of, that homeschool brings to your family and your communities.
Beautiful. Let me just interject. Since the beginning of the year, we've been wanting to go over what either families that are considering homeschooling and they're not, families that are just about to homeschool, families that just started homeschooling, families that are already homeschooling. We wanted to go over what we think are these hot topics for homeschooling, things that you hear as objections or serious things you need to take into account regarding, hey, if I'm going to homeschool my kids or not. And we spent the first part of the year going over what we like to call the most common excuses. And we kind of wanted to do some myth busting on, oh, my kids aren't going to be properly socialized. And, we had 3 spaces on that where it's the opposite. Your homeschool children are going to be socialized according to your family, and your public school socialized children are going to be socialized to the public school. Anyone who thinks that that's better might need to rethink that idea. Then we spent a little time on the matter of curriculum, meaning I don't know if I'm going to be giving my kids the right curriculum. And that's actually an anti-truth. The curriculum that you will do at home is significantly better than the curriculum and the age versus stage garbage that they give you, from grade 1 to grade 12 in the system. So the point is, we wanted to unpack those as these are common excuses that people give for, maybe even as a parent. It's like, well, I don't think I should homeschool because of such and such. And those are the most common too. And both of those are an inverse of the truth. Both of those things, those aren't problems. But this is the first of some spaces we would like to talk about some things you should take very seriously and to heart about, what should I be looking for? How should I go about taking care of my children? And that should be true for any children, even if your kids are in public school. But if you're homeschooling, you're going to be around some families and some children and some, communities of people a lot more. And so you should take the time to get to know what that's supposed to look like and get to know who you're around and assess your own between yourself and your spouse, if you're a single parent, whatever it is, with their grandparents, whoever your community is. What are our values? What are we taking seriously? What matters to us for the sake of our children? And to me, this is the just another example where if you're sending your child to the box down the street, you're assuming that means that place is going to be the best place to put your children. And most of us have done absolutely nothing to vet that, to prove that, to assess that. And let me say that another way, which is going to sound really harsh, but sorry. The other people in your neighborhoods who are sending their children there have probably not done any vetting. And I'm just going to throw this out there. That might mean they're the kinds of people who do not do things like vet who their children are around. And now you're in a cohort of your second grade class with your 6 and 7 year old, and half of the class is full of people whose parents are the kind of people that do not vet who their children are around. Just let that sink in. And if you so here again, the issue is, why is developing your homeschooling community so meaningful, and why is that so clearly a better approach than sending your child to the federal penitentiary box down the street, where they're simply going to get every free radical that's available? That's my rant. That's my speech.
I think it was brought up a little bit on, your kids are going to be in the world and be eventually be part in the world, and that's absolutely true.
Right.
And so part of that vetting is to try different avenues. We took our daughter to Taekwondo, and there's lots of different kids in that.
My brother and I always talk about how we're not raising children, we're raising adults. And so with having that in mind, it's important that you teach them. And like once they, if you walk through this with them like on a regular basis, you're not you're walking through, these are the people we're hanging out with, these are the people we're not hanging out with. If you have to have that conversation, most of the time you've already curated the people, so you don't have to worry about it. But by the time they're teenagers, like my kids are, they're vetting people themselves. They've gotten in the habit of doing it, and they know who good people are and who good people aren't. And I'm really hoping that transfers into me having good son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, because I think that's a huge part of your life, right?
Good luck. Best wishes. Sorry, I shouldn't have said it that way.
I mean, we all want that kind of luck,
Yes,
right?
absolutely, 100%.
I feel like I've got 4 kids, so I feel like there's a decent chance I'm not gonna 100% get along with all of them, but I'm a peacekeeper type person, so I think I can get along with them. I probably won't 100% approve of all of them, but that's okay. I'm okay
I
with
don't
that.
100%
As
approve
long
of my
as
own
they
children.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. And, relationships are tricky. And I think that's part of the whole community issue. Relationships and marriages are even trickier. And so, yeah, hopefully it all translates into me being able to be the grandma with the most grandkids at her house the most
There you go.
time.
One of the things that I wanted to throw out too is where you live matters. If you live in a place where it's hard to find children and families that you would connect with and your children would be happy being around, this isn't us telling everybody what to do, but you can move. One thing I remember growing up was we lived on a street in the middle of a dinky little old town, but our street had 2 or 3 families on it, and we were the right word is blessed. You could say privileged, you could say lucky, you could say my parents tried to move to a neighborhood that was decent, however you want to put that. Those are probably all true. And we were just around people whose both children and and parents were decent people. And so that was very important. I mean, I still have great memories of growing up with good friends who were kind and interesting and got along, and whose parents felt comfortable getting on to us when we were doing the wrong thing, just as if we were at home, which means that their parents are minding their children. And my parents let us play all day long in some people's houses who their parents were, their family was clearly having that same kind of way of being with their own children. And so, just even being on the same block as such people, that's one way to get your community down, is get yourself situated in the right spot. If you have to drive an hour to get to decent families, I'm not, hopefully you can figure out how to do it. I'm not saying everybody's loaded with money and can just uproot themselves and move, but you should do that. Sorry, there's more there. I don't know, John's still there. And I think Homeschool Life, the Prescotts, I believe they're back. I think he asked he dropped out somehow. You're welcome to pick back up, or Norseman, did you have more to ask or some more thoughts about what we were saying?
No, I was just trying to put some conversation starters in there and see what everybody thought. It's things
Beautiful.
that I have been kind of mulling over in my head and kind of trying to see the gamut of different personalities and that sort of stuff. So no, I was more just kind of poking and prodding gently.
Great. I love that.
So I'm magnetic. I'm thinking about like different homeschool groups and stuff. And I think if I was non-religious or agnostic, I think I wouldn't tend towards secular groups, because like Jonathan was talking about earlier, and I've seen it happen as well. They're very territorial about not, and they turn very leftist very quick. And so I don't know, if I was in a position where I was not necessarily wanting a religious group, and religious groups can be scary even for me. Like I don't want to go to one of those really fundamentalist ones where they don't, if they don't celebrate Halloween, we're going to have issues, because that's my kids' favorite holiday. Like they love dressing up. It's like it's almost better than Christmas to them. Actually, they say it's their favorite, so it's probably better than Christmas to them.
And in some of our groups, we have families that are atheist agnostic. The parents are that way.
Yeah.
And they want to be around, and we want them around.
Right, exactly. And you want to find a group like that. That's basically the long and short of it. Not one that doesn't celebrate Halloween, and not one that, I mean, unless that's your thing. If you're the type that doesn't celebrate Halloween, those are the groups.
I should probably speak up here.
Let us know.
We don't, our family, we don't celebrate any holidays, and it's not a religious thing, and it's not we look down on anybody. I mean, my kids are young enough that they just like the Christmas vibe, and great, and they like the Halloween thing, and great. But like, we do not go out of our way at all whatsoever to celebrate holidays. And
You don't even celebrate Toyotathon?
we probably have a higher chance of celebrating Toyotathon as a family than just about any. I'm sorry, that was a terrible thing. No, it's not something we go out of our way to do. We do not put up trees. We do not put up lights. We do not, deck ourselves out. We don't paint our faces red, white, and blue. We just don't do that. But we are around people who that's all they do, and we love it. It's fine. It's completely wonderful, and it has nothing to do with whether or not we feel like we're around good people. Again, these kinds of things are usually symptoms of other problems. It's like that thing on the surface isn't the problem. It's a sign of something else. Anyway, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, we grew up in a basically a Protestant household, and then my wife, she grew up in a Catholic household, and around Christmas time, they do the Advent calendar, and I never experienced that. But it's like, I don't care. That's good with me if y'all want to do that. So
yeah, I love that. By the way, we're usually stopping at around 20:30. Just a quick heads up that maybe in the next few minutes we may be ending. We might go a little bit further than that. Just depends on how the chat's going. But we invited up to speak Untied Wolf Dog and Gualberto. I wanted to say hi to both of you. You're both welcome to say something.
Wally Nakachina Bina has his hand up.
Attaboy.
Hey, what's up, teachers?
Hey, Wally.
Hi, Wally.
I would like to ask a question. Sorry for the noise. This place is crazy today. I don't believe in God. No, I believe in evil and bad. Evil and good.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I speak to my nephew? I don't have kids. How do I speak to my nephew when he will ask me, because he will do it, about God? What can I tell him that sounds like, impartial? I don't want to say like, well, yes or no. I just want to say something like specific, like something like I can guide him through his own feelings, not mine.
Listen, Wally, our Wednesday X spaces are not usually 10-hour spaces, which is not the bare minimum to even begin answering that question.
If I may.
Hit it.
I was raised in the absence of God. Over time, I have realized that the values that were presented to me were Christian in base. And so over time, I have, made changes to my approach. But when I asked about things like that when I was growing up, my parents always responded with a question. So I'd say, what is God? And, they'd tell me the specifics of, okay, this is what some people believe, and you can choose to believe that as well if you'd like to. There was never any pressure. But if you were to be asked something about that, like, is hell real, for example, the answer that I always got back was, well, what do you think?
That's a good question.
Yes, actually, that is psychology, Mac. That is psychology, and it works with an adult. I don't know how it works with kids.
No, yeah, you're right.
Oh, yeah, it works great with kids. Yeah, it gets their brain going and everything. I mean, and it makes for a fairly short conversation, too, because their answer is probably going to be short. And then you can just say, okay, that sounds good. And then maybe they go and think about it a little bit more later. And then that's kind of the end of it.
Really good.
I'll jump in here for a second. So that approach that Magnetic just said is basically how we started introducing our kids to the subject, because I was raised Baptist, basically. My parents used to sometimes literally have to drag me to church as a kid. And so I went to church as a kid every Sunday. And my wife, her mother, for whatever reason, I think it has something to do with like Mormonism, and she had a bad experience as a kid. So she is like militantly anti-religion. And so my wife never went to church with her family. I think she went with some friends a couple of times as a teenager. But so my wife at this point is mostly like agnostic. Like she believes in a higher power, a greater being. And I've explained my religious take more like the movie Dogma, where in that movie they say that how do you know which religion is the right one, and then they say like no one's nailed it quite yet, or like no one's nailed it. So basically, and I kind of live by a similar thing. Like I enjoy going to church, and I do have certain beliefs that kind of go with a certain religion, like Christianity. But it was the same thing with my kids. I mean, the first time they heard about God, I think it was either like my grandparents or my parents brought it up, and when they were finally old enough to ask, like my oldest, she asked about it, and then the neighbor kids, talk about it sometimes. And we were kind of the same way though. Like we explained it to her, like, this is what some people believe, and it's the same way we dealt with that thing about going to hell for like in Halloween. It's like, well, this is just what certain people believe, and not everybody. People don't know for sure. Like, no one can claim to know for sure what's going to happen, and we just, answer their questions as they come. If they have a question, like, who is this Jesus guy? We tell them I told them everything that I knew about it. And just, as when the questions come, you can answer the questions. And even for you who doesn't believe in God, as you say, you can still answer the question as though like you said, like you're not trying to persuade them one way or the other. But if they came up to you and said like, oh, who's Jesus? Then you can just tell them what you know of it without interjecting any opinion or anything. And and then just let them decide for themselves. And my older daughter, she seems to already be a little more leaning towards like religion and asks a lot more questions about God. And then my 5-year-old, she right now couldn't care less. She loves to tell her sister, don't say, oh my God. That's the only thing she really ever references. But yeah, like I think you're doing it right. Just answer the questions.
This is like this is the same answer for any kid's question, huh?
It's pretty much the same answer for any
Mostly.
question. So good. Norseman, if your hand's still up, you're welcome to go.
No, it's down.
Okay.
Yeah, go on. If you guys want to close up, feel free.
Yeah, we got a couple more minutes for sure.
Well, I just want to say thank you for hosting this space. And thank you for everyone for coming and joining. And thank you for allowing me to speak. And I just want to say I love you guys. If you haven't heard it today, I love you.
Appreciate that, Norm. I love that.
Yes, I feel grateful to be here with the Queen and the Owl and Mac and Fizzy and Mary. That was my godmother to the reply guy thing, because she accepted me in the group and they taught me everything that I know about reply guy, and I love what you do with the homeschool doing a thing, guys.
Thanks, Walberto.
Thanks, Nicholas, and thanks, Wally.
Thank you for hosting. Appreciate it.
Always, for sure. It's good to see you again, Jonathan.
And say hello to my Venezuelan girl, the lady that I don't know if she's here, but I met her in one of your spaces, Queen, and I want to say hello to her.
Hey, and don't forget to follow the host and co-hosts, by the way.
You're a doll, Norm.
Adorable.
That is farming.
Yeah, I'll say, Your Majesty, shall we call it? I'll just give some closing remarks, and John will too.
Yeah, my dog is barking in the background. That's why I've been so silent.
Oh, you're good.
Sorry about that.
Fair enough. Yes, thank you, everyone. Sorry about the beginning. I was having some technical difficulties, so I had to get onto a different machine and get into the space. And thank you all for being around. Quick thank you. We really love the Prescotts, the Homeschool Life LLC. They have a lovely book, wonderful book called Kids Don't Need School. Go read that and then read it a second time, and you'll get a lot of help from it. And Narm, it is always a pleasure to see you, and you bring really comfortable and calm and sweet vibe to our spaces, and I'm always glad you're here. And Fizzy, I wish you'd been able to speak up a little bit more. He has a bunch of really cool things to say, and I know he's trying to take care of his own family and homeschooling his kids and everything. And Wally, it's always nice to hear from you. And you asked a really great question, and unpacking it may take a lot longer, so we should have some more discussion on that subject. And Dens, thank you so much for your chat. Your stories are great. I'd actually like to get more of those stories out of you, because those are really helpful to hear. And thank you to Marie. She was around. Really glad to see you down there. I know that the Time Trek Learning was here for a little while. As far as us, this is Bowtied Queen Bee, Her Majesty. She has this X space every single Wednesday. Tell your friends if you hear of any families or yourselves who wanted to get some help and some support and some thoughts on homeschooling. Please come see us every Wednesday at 1900 Eastern Time, 7 p.m. And we have a podcast now with Her Majesty and John Says Stuff, who is sporting a brand new dark mode, crazy, deep thinking, great profile picture. And we have a podcast. It is Hive and Nest Homeschool. Wherever you are finding your podcasts, go check those out. We are going to upload podcast episodes as well as past spaces. So if you want to listen to some of our discussions we've had in the past, it's actually nice to listen to them over on the homeschool Hive and Nest Homeschool podcast, because they're edited for some of those sound spaces and time. If you listen to them through X, you're going to get them in the regular version. But if you listen to them on the podcast, you'll get the little spaces broken out, so they're a little bit easier to listen to, and they're not quite as long. And I am your Uncle Al. Please come see us anytime. I love being in spaces and hanging out with people. And honestly, most of the people that are here are already people I hang out with in spaces with all the time. And so I'm glad to see you all. John, you got any closing remarks?
Just want to say thank you for everybody coming, and you took most of my stuff, but I will also plug Her Majesty Queen Bee has a group, community rather, and please join that homeschooling community. And Uncle Al just started his own, which is Coffee with Your Uncle Al, where he likes to just deep dive into conversations, because I believe, as he puts it, everyone has something important to say and deserves a captive audience. So check out their communities. And I'm also going to throw out Magnetic Norses. If you're a fan of memes, check out the Meme Militia. And yeah, other than that, you covered all the podcast stuff. So I think that's it. Also, Nate Skate, you're going to have to tell me how to change the color of that heart, maybe in DMs or something, because I want a green heart. Mine's purple for some reason.
Nice. I'll expect to hear that from Nate as well. I don't know how to do it on the I don't know how to do it on the web or on an Android, but I don't know how to do it on an iPhone.
Yeah, just long press.
I see. Yeah, we'll look into that. And Her Majesty, she's got a line. She's gonna say it right now, or I'm gonna say it for her. Is she available?
I am available. What's my line?
You're gonna say send me DMs.
Oh yeah, that's true. My DMs are always open. If you guys want help homeschooling, or just somebody to sound off to, or I love DMs. I'm probably in DMs more than I am on anything else. And questions or observations or just general chit chat, I am always good for DMs. I'm more of a one-on-one person, so yeah, DMs always open, especially about homeschooling.
He is really good to have a one-on-one conversation with.
I love that. Final thoughts? Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to contact us, please check the show notes, and don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to this.